Three players who stood out in the Oregon spring game above the rest. There were several, and if you want to hear a full breakdown, you can go check out Locked On Ducks, and I'll give the full rundown and go all in. But here we're hitting the headliners, and there were a couple, right? Two on offense and one on defense. One I've kind of already mentioned, Dante Thornton. He was showing some Deshaun Jackson like skills with the way he was catching the long passes and beating guys over the top. I think he can be Oregon's most consistent deep threat because he just kind of has that potential, and he's shown an ability. He showed it in the Alamo Bowl when he caught a long touchdown. He had another one, I think it was against Stony Brook last year. He's just got that sort of look as a guy who lines up on the outside. You're not going to put him in the slot, I don't think, hardly ever. At least I wouldn't. And so I think he very much could become a wide receiver one sort of guy, at least on the outside, who you can throw a deep ball to in a one-on-one situation. And Bo Nix, not shy to pull the trigger the way Anthony Brown was. So that could become an asset. Another guy who made that initial opening play that started this whole discussion about big explosive plays and generating headlines of such for Oregon fans after the spring game was Seven McGee. Now, he came to Oregon from the state of New York as a running back. And one thing that was a cool thing for Duck fans to hear is he's from New York, but he said he grew up idolizing DeAnthony Thomas, one of the most explosive, probably the most explosive player Oregon football's ever had. His highlight reels are unlike anybody else. And Seven McGee, when he had that 70-yarder, he caught it in space, and then he did this little weave at the end where he was juking a guy back and forth and trying to turn a DB around, a la DeAnthony Thomas back in the day, which was a cool thing for Oregon fans to see. But the thing that impressed me even more than that, because I knew coming into this season, he almost transferred, by the way, if you didn't know, he was in the portal, and then Dan Lanning came in and convinced him to stay, and he went in the portal after Mario Cristobal left, who had recruited him to the Ducks. But he's making the transition to wide receiver and looks to be doing a really good job of just that. Yes, I enjoyed seeing him carry the ball in space and showcase the speed and the juke ability, but I knew he had that even when he came to Oregon as a running back. But what impressed me the most was his touchdown catch. He lined up in the slot, and it was an RPO play, and Bo Nix threaded the needle to fit it into him, but he beat Jamal Hill one-on-one on a slant route towards the inside of the end zone. And Jamal Hill is someone who has played regularly for the Ducks over the last couple of years. So that to me says that he is making the adjustment to being a full-time pass catcher really well, which is a good thing for Oregon fans because he is explosive. And he showed the hands. He reached out with one hand, bobbled it in the air, and was able to corral it going to the ground. But route running is an underrated part of being a wide receiver, and I hope he can learn this from UCLA wide receiver Chase Cota, or the transfer that is, who's now with the Ducks and looked good in the spring game also. But Seven McGee, I think he's still got a little bit of room to grow in that sense. But when I saw him beat Jamal Hill one-on-one, and he did so a couple times over the course of the game, that to me said that, it's a good positional move and he's going to be able to make the change because it's going to be a tough thing to do. Finding a new position or playing a new position rather is challenging, right? And guys often have the physical abilities to do that, which Seven clearly does. Seven, who wears number 7, by the way, as of this year. Another welcome change in 2022, because if your name is Seven, you have to be. I mean, what would George Costanza say? Huh? If Seven McGee wasn't wearing number 7 as he was wearing number 0 last year? Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I think Seven McGee showed a lot, and getting him the ball in space, that's going to be a really good play at any point in the game for Duck fans and offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham. So the third player who stood out the most was on the defensive side of the ball. And the highlights of the day were primarily dominated by the offense. So the defense created a couple of turnovers. Ty Thompson made a poor throw that Keith Brown picked off. Jaleel Florence, the 4-star freshman corner who committed to the Ducks over USC, made a great play on a throw from Jay Butterfield where he was kind of beaten, but then he got back into it, basically ripped the ball away from Isaiah Crocker. That was really impressive. So there were some defensive moments. J.J. Greenfield had an interception. There were a number of sacks out there as well. One of the guys who was creating those sacks, DJ Johnson. Now, for those of you who are not Duck fans, which I presume is most of you, that's what I'm here for. He has played I think 4 different positions. He keeps switching back and forth. This is his 5th year with the Ducks. He's wearing his 5th different number. He was 12 last year. He's been 89. He's been 7. This year, he's number 2. I don't remember what his first number was, but he was playing that edge position, right? Sort of the Kayvon Thibodeau role. He's not a Kayvon Thibodeau type of player, though Dan Lanning has been very praiseworthy of him. And last year he was playing tight end, played a little bit of defensive end, but mostly was playing tight end. And Oregon now has a lot of depth at the tight end position, so it's allowed DJ Johnson to move back to kind of that edge role where you're a hybrid defensive end and linebacker. He can stand up. He can also put his hand in the ground. But he was by far, I think, Jackson LaDuke a close second. I thought DJ Johnson by far was the best Oregon defensive player all game long. He was wreaking havoc in the run game. He was wreaking havoc in the pass game, getting after the quarterback. I think he had 4 sacks in the game, a couple other quarterback pressures. And now you have to take those sacks in context because, to get a sack in a spring game, you just have to get to the quarterback and be able to tap him or make it look like you were going to make the tackle. So it might have only ended up being 2 sacks. Regardless, he was beating his guys regularly, and he looked faster than I've ever seen him. I mean, he was a good tight end, right? He was a good blocker and mostly caught balls that were, at or around the line of scrimmage. And he showcased some good speed, but he had this tenacious energy and drive about him when he was flying in off the end to make a tackle on a running play or speed rushing off the edge or anything that he was doing. He looked like a different player. And if Oregon can get that sort of DJ Johnson this fall, it's going to be a big help to their defense because Kayvon Thibodeau departing leaves a big void in the pass rushing department because outside of Kayvon Thibodeau, there wasn't a great Oregon pass rusher on the defensive line. And so they're looking to fill that void. Braden Swinson is a name who needs to step up this year for Dan Lanning's defense, but Coach Lanning has been very praiseworthy of DJ Johnson. And I tell you what, this spring game showed why. He looked much improved and comfortable on the defensive side of the ball compared to previous years when he's been kind of moving around. And I think that's understandable. You give a guy a full run through of spring practice in terms of reps on one side rather than having him go back and forth. I think that's advantageous. And Tosh Lupo and Dan Lanning have a guy in DJ Johnson who could really, really pop this year if he plays the way he did on Saturday in Autzen.